Hello and welcome. Today I will be talking about books with my very mediocre art, but who knows, it could get better. But the book that I will be talking about is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. The main reason I got this book was the cover. I mean, just look at it. It's just so pretty. But obviously, I didn't get this book solely because I thought the cover was nice. I obviously really love the description too, which is kind of surprising because I don't usually go for mystery books. Don't get me wrong, I love a good mystery in my book, but I don't generally seek out specifically books that have mystery as their main plot point. Now, if you haven't read this book, let me just give like a quick description of what it's about. Obviously, I suck at descriptions, so I'd always recommend reading the actual description and seeing if you are into it. Now, the premise is pretty, I don't know, like it's that generic mystery trope of like, for some reason, this random person inherits all this rich person's money while, disinheriting all of his family. Now you have Avery, who just simply wants to graduate high school, get a scholarship, and get a good job down the line, which I have to say, a lot more planning than I ever had in high school, but, props on you. But fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, she weirdly inherits billions from this unknown billionaire. At least to her, she has no idea who this is. And now the clause to get all her money from this dude is that she has to live in the house of the people that this person just disinherited from, which, you gotta love the family dinners in that scenario, right? But anyway, she has to deal with the Hawthorne grandsons, the four of them. Now you have Grayson, who's the heir apparent, who was supposed to, inherit all the billions and billions of dollars, thinking that Avery's a con woman, which, fair man, and is trying to expose her or something. And then you have Jameson, who is kind of thinking that Avery is their grandfather's, last, riddle, because Tobias, their grandfather, was in love with riddles, of always having Sunday riddle time with his grandsons, which is, it sounds fun, I guess. And Jameson's trying to figure out the last mystery that their grandfather left for them. Then you just have Avery there just trying to, float and not, die in all the drama. That's the general gist of the story. I suck at descriptions, as I said before, so if you're even remotely interested in whatever the hell I just said, I would say go read the description. I'll just say some general thoughts now, or kind of the non-spoiler section of this whole review. Now, as a story, I was really into it. It was really fast-paced, which is, probably one of the biggest takeaways that I had from reading this. The writing style, how the pacing was, and the story really flowed together well. The writing style is very straightforward and very dialogue-heavy from what I noticed. So if you're not that kind of reader, maybe this isn't the book for you per se. I still recommend, reading a couple chapters to see if, you're into it. The story-wise, I didn't like it, but I did feel like there were some things that just didn't really flow as well as it could have been, which I think the main cause, very ironically, was the fact that the mystery was so central to everything. Now, I know that sounds a bit weird, it's a mystery book, of course it's gonna be, the center of, the whole story. But here's the thing, because the characters and the audience's attention are all geared towards, the mystery, at least for me, right? Whenever the story went into the subplots, whether it be romance or another, mystery plot or another, character development or something like that, it just felt kind of weakened. In the sense that I really wasn't as invested, and I really did not feel like certain aspects of the story were as developed as the mystery. It very much felt like, oh, if you're reading this, it's the mystery that you're going to be interested in. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, of course, it's a mystery book. That's the whole point I'm reading. But you have to kind of be honest that when you read a mystery, yeah, you want to know what, is the murderer, you want to know who did it, or, the end result. But you can't help but also say you were really interested in the romance, or you were interested in this specific character and how, how they were going to end up, whether or not they were going to grow. And that's not to say at all that I felt any of that stuff really made the story bad by any means. I kind of just felt like, I wish these parts could have been developed a bit more or kind of expanded. I definitely felt that for the romance section of it all. Now, I don't think that's a spoiler. I think we all knew, like, of course there's going to be romance from the description. But I don't know. I'll explain more in the spoiler section just because I don't want to give anything away per se. As a whole, I think it was a good book without going into too much detail of it. But I would totally recommend it if you haven't read it. Again, like, the writing style or perhaps just how the story is might not appeal to everyone, but I would say, read a couple chapters. They kind of flow really quick. Now, kind of moving more into the spoiler section. If you haven't read it or you're still thinking about it, I would say go read it. But I'm not going to monitor you, so, on you if you continue. Now, of course, we get introduced to Avery at first, and I have to say I was into her character, but I did feel like, again, I felt like the story kind of overrode any character development we could have seen with her. It's kind of like that situation in which it feels like the story's moving the character and the character's not really moving the story. Not to say again that I hated Avery, it just felt like, I wish there was a bit more to her by the end of the story. The moment that Harry was introduced, I have to say, I knew he had to have played a bigger role in all of this. Like, you just don't introduce a character and not have them, like, come full circle, I guess. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out in the next book. So glad by the end of the book that, like, yes, I wasn't just being paranoid and he does, play a bigger role in all of this. Now, of course, we also get introduced to Libby, who I loved. She was so sweet. I will admit she did get on my nerves at points, but as a whole, I thought she was, like, such a sweet character. I mean, I hope she gets a cupcake shop, and is happy baking a bunch of pastries. Like, she deserves it, truly. And I loved their kind of dynamic. There was that kind of pull of, like, you are half sisters, but, like, that doesn't matter. You're still my sister. You were always there for me. But I thought that was sweet. Now, of course, as I said before, it's a really fast-paced story, so we get very quickly introduced to Grayson Hawthorne, who comes to Avery's school and gets Libby involved and says, hey, we tried to contact you for a while through notarized letters saying, hey, you have to come to this will reading. And okay, I'm on Libby's side on this, okay? If you get, like, a weird letter that says, hey, you gotta go to a will reading, that's, like, a bunch of red flags, okay? I don't know what they expected here, but okay. On the topic of the first introduction to Grayson, I don't know. Like, this is another gripe I had, specifically on the romance. I don't know if anyone else felt it, but I felt like when Avery had, like, that one line of, oh, Grayson has such nice features, he's very intimidating, very handsome, I felt like that was a little off character. I mean, we just met Avery for, like, the last 10 pages, so that's not a lot to say, oh, I know this character, but it didn't really flow as well as it could have, I think. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but anyway, so Libby and Avery flies to Texas, I believe, to meet the wonderfully dysfunctional Hawthorne family. And I was kind of into their characters, I guess. I did feel like, again, I felt like they were kind of 2D. They had, like, their traits, like, their notable traits. They speak certain ways so I could detect them. But yeah, I wished I could have gotten more from each of the characters. I mean, I liked Nash, the eldest, of course, but I did think that he was kind of 2D. There wasn't a lot that went into his background and character. I mean, there was a lot of implications, but we didn't really see a lot of him. I didn't mind it. I mean, did I like the romance that was implied between him and Libby? I mean, not especially. I mean, that's coming from a biased standpoint because I want Libby to have her own cupcake shop. So there's that. And then, of course, you have the middle brothers who probably saw the most of out of the brothers in this book, which is Grayson and Jameson. And on the topic of like romance in this book, I wasn't really into it. I felt like it really didn't flow as well as it could have been. It felt like kind of forced just because there wasn't a lot of lead up to any of the intimate scenes, if that makes sense. Especially the kissing scene with Jameson. Like, oh, I felt like it just didn't feel like a natural thing to go to. Like, obviously, Avery kind of said, like, oh, I'm attracted to him. But I don't know, I wasn't really into Jameson as a character, too. I felt like as a character, I could have appreciated him, but I also just did not see him as a love interest by any means. Like, for me, the kissing scene really showed what I thought about his character in the regards to a romantic love interest. He just seems way too focused on one thing to really allow anything else to go into it. I mean, that could also be the fact that, you know, he's emotionally scarred from his whole relationship with Emily and all that. I will get into Emily later, but I don't know. I sympathize with Jameson. I thought he was an interesting character, but I really think that Avery can do better, if that makes sense, you know? And the other, you know, interest that was Grayson, like, we didn't really see him. And then, like, at the end, like, oh yeah, she's gonna make out with him because, you know, Jameson's not there. Which, that makes it seem like Avery was kind of just, you know, willy-nilly with the whole romance. I don't think she was. It showed to me that, like, the relationship with Jameson really wasn't as strong, even to her. So, there's that. I also, on the record of Jameson, I felt like he was kind of an a-hole throughout the whole book. I mean, we get, like, his whole, like, oh, he's a good person thing, but even then, I was just not into him. Like, we don't see him that much in the book, if we really go into it, right? So yeah, that's what I thought about the romance section of that. And of course you have the youngest, Xander, which I will say I didn't see him being like the mastermind behind all of this, or like not mastermind, but like, you know, the one that's pushing all of them to solve the mystery. I didn't see that coming. Maybe I should have with all the little hints he was giving throughout the book, but you know, I missed it completely. But yeah, I liked the brothers because they all had distinct, you know, characteristics that I could point out. But I did feel like they were kind of flat at some times. Now, of course, moving on from the characters, but I will talk about that, you know, later on still, but the mystery aspect of it all. That's what I really love the most out of this book. Not really the characters or the subplot, but just the premise. I was really interested and invested to kind of know what happens, you know, what's the connection between everyone. I liked the riddles and like all the little, you know, codes and all that stuff. I thought it was really, you know, cool. Don't get me wrong, at times I felt like, I'm not gonna say it's too easy, because trust me, if I got some of these riddles, it would take me a while to figure out. But you would expect, like, a dude that has Sunday riddle time of his grandsons to be more convoluted, you know? I was kind of hoping for that. We got somewhat to that line, but it all kind of felt like a bit too on the nose for me. Also, can we just talk about how, like, Avery and everyone else kind of brushed off the fact that she was shot at so easily? Like, of course, there was that scene where, like, she's being paranoid and she's freaking out, but it was kind of just like a footnote, and then we don't really talk about it that much later on. Like, you know, we have that continued, like, you know, she's paranoid of everything, but you got shot at. Like, I feel like you would feel more, like, you would feel more. That's what I was thinking. Now, I really did like the subplot with Emily and, you know, Thea, I think. I'm going to say Thea and Rebecca, and how they all fit into this. You know, kind of the backstory of the boys, too. I really liked it. I thought it added a lot of kind of depth to what we're dealing with. Because it's not only just, you know, a mystery. Oh, why did, you know, their grandfather give all this money away to this random girl? But you also kind of get into, like, it's a bit more than that. Now, I have to say, The thing that I got away from all of this is that I utterly hate Emily. And the thing, this is gonna be heartless to say, but the only thing that made me happy when I thought of Emily throughout this whole book, once I figured out the whole plot and all that stuff with Emily, was that, oh yeah, she's dead. So that was kind of heartless to think of, but I genuinely hated her. Now I get it. It's important to point out that all the information that we're getting of Emily is from, other people that could be very biased in how they think, or they're kind of, putting, rose tinted glasses over the memory. But just based off of what other people have said, that's going to be the basis of why I hate Emily. Now, I'm sure a lot of people who have read the book can also agree with me that you despise Emily. Now, I'm going to be honest, again, as I said, I'm heartless in this regard, but I'm sad in this Emily situation, not because she's dead by any means, but because she died, it's still affecting everyone around her. And I feel bad because the people around her don't really deserve that. They didn't do anything. They deserve to be happy and not have this ghost on them, especially Rebecca. Rebecca, again, we didn't really get to know her that much, besides the 2D traits that every character was handed. But I liked Rebecca. I wanted her to be happy because the things that we do learn about her is what her parents tell her, hey, make sure your sister is happy because she has a heart condition, and woe her, be sad for her even after she gets a new heart. And you have to think, being told that as a kid, and then you have to continue to do that when you become a teenager, when you're supposed to be able to, find yourself, become who you are meant to be in life, which, let's be honest, when you're a teenager, you don't know any of that crap, but whatever. And I felt really bad, especially, this is the biggest point why I dislike Emily, not because of, the whole cheating thing and the manipulating of Grayson and Jameson, because that is bad, but the worst thing is that what she did to her sister, because the one time Rebecca finds happiness with Thea, right? She finds happiness. She feels like, I can have this. Emily comes in and says, wow, you betrayed me. And it isn't a betrayal because, as my sister, you didn't tell me, about your relationship and all that. No, it's because Emily has this weird mentality of oh, I own you, so you have to do everything by what I want. And you're not your own person, you're there to make my life happy. And now I could be projecting onto her character because we don't really know that much, but you have to be honest, that's what it seemed like. And it doesn't help that her actions that led to her death also kind of prove that statement that she thinks she owns other people. Is okay, so Jameson breaks up with you because you're basically cheating on him with his own brother. And okay, on this topic of the whole cheating thing, right, which I don't think is the biggest cause for hating her, because in the whole realm of hatred towards Emily, this is kind of a bit lower on every scale, but I'm not sure that it was only her manipulating the boys, because there has to be look on the other perspective. Jameson and Grayson had this weird competition in which they had this need to one-up one another. So this could have been one of their forms to one-up one another by using Emily as a way to say oh, I'm better than you, or, brotherly competition. So you could argue that there was double manipulation. They were both using each other for their own benefit in whatever form, but still, Then, of course, you had her, basically say to Jameson after he breaks up with her for very valid reasons, fine, I'll just go to this swimming pond or whatever with your brother and jump from this very dangerous ledge that even expert jumpers say don't fucking do that. I'm still gonna do it. And then she proceeds to die and everyone thinks it's their fault, which again, I could be heartless or whatever, but no, it's not. She decided to do that, even though she knew if anyone should know about her medical stuff, it should be her. But even if you have a new heart, right, you still have to be careful. what do you expect? But yeah, we find out everything, and then once we get to some of the ending and the last puzzles, Jameson and Grayson both kind of back away because they think their grandfather is like making this cruel joke about Emily, which like no, like it's obvious that, at least to me, that Avery played a bigger role than just simply having the same birthday as Emily's death day or something. But yeah, eventually everyone comes back together and we figure it out. We get to the end of the mystery. At least for now. We don't really read everyone's letters that the grandfather left, but it's kind of resolved that, like, yeah, obviously Avery did know Tobias, though it was when she was very young, and obviously Tobias kept up with her. But we also have that little thing at the end where Harry, the one that we met in the beginning, was Tobias's son that went missing in a fire at a lake house or something. So yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see what Xander does. Maybe the focus is going to be more on him, Thea, and Rebecca. But who knows? Maybe we'll see more romance with Avery, with either Grayson or Jameson. I'm gonna be honest right now, I don't really have a big want for either of them. As I said before, I don't really think either of them are really romance interest material right now. That could change, who knows. I'm kind of surprised because I usually have like a choice by this point when it comes to like love arrows. Side note that I completely forgot to talk about was that move by Thea to make Avery look so much like Emily was such a horrible move to go by. I don't know how to feel about Thea because I don't know what her prerogative is. Like, is her whole motive to be a horrible person, or is she acting like this because she hates the Hawthorne brothers because, she believes that they caused Emily's death? Which, like, no, as I said before. But, like, yeah, that just shows to me that Rebecca can do much better than Thea. At the end of the day, I really did enjoy this book, even though I had some, things that I didn't love about it that much. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for that mystery fix for that day or anything else. There's definitely that comparison to Knives Out, but this definitely has more of a youthful twist on the whole cliche of, someone gets billions of dollars from this random person. So, but yeah, those were my thoughts about the Inheritance Game. I would love to hear what you guys thought, if I missed anything that you really wanted to talk about, or just in general, any book recommendations. I'm always looking for those. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next story.